Hey guys, John here from Sonic Drive Studio. I hope you're all doing well and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to talk about drums, especially big and fat rock and metal drums, using ML drums by ML Sound Lab, using all the latest updates, as well as the new Meld cymbal pack. I'm basically going to show you guys how I used that sampler and my own mixing techniques to make the drum sound my own, and to make them sound very big, huge and fat and realistic in the mix. Let's start by taking a listen to a song that I created for this video, just so you can hear everything in context. Check it out. Alright, that sounded quite fat and massive. I like it. Really beefy and thick, but also quite punchy. Great sounding drums. And by the way, since most of you probably are guitar nerds, the guitar tones were my Schecter E1 Apocalypse Red Rain through the ML Sound Lab Amped Icon amp model. Let's take a very quick listen to the isolated guitars. Cool, so that was all stock, but this video is not about the guitars, this video is about the drums. So I used ML drums by ML Sound Lab for all the drum sampling in this video, and I basically went in and created my own hybrid kit. If you're not familiar with ML drums, it's basically a very affordable and easy to use drum sampler that I've featured on the channel before. I definitely recommend giving it a look, and I'll put a link in the description below as well. There's also a free version that you can try out, by the way, with no strings attached, so that's cool as well. But you can buy expansion packs though, and I have them all. So the Essentials, Lux, and Meld. Meld is the newest pack, and it basically adds a full new cymbal set based on the Meinl Byzance cymbals. So I'm using those for all the overhead stuff, so I replaced all the stock cymbals with those. The Lux expansion is great as well, especially the snares are really to my liking, so I chose one of those snares. So I'm using the L Super 14x5 snare with the 262 Hz tuning. And what I like about those snares, besides them sounding really good, is that you can choose various actual tunings for each snare, so very low tuned or very high tuned or anything in between, and all those tunings are actually sampled, so no pitch shifting was used. And for the kick I used the Essential stuff, and I chose the B91A mic option. Let's take a quick listen to a section of the song with just the drums so you guys can hear the drums by themselves. Check it out. Alright, so for the drum sounds, this time around I turned off most of the processing inside ML Drums itself, because there is a mixer in there that you can use to EQ, compress, and saturate the drums, which is very nice. I did that in my previous videos. But this time I wanted to try my own processing inside Cubase with the plugins that I'm familiar with, just to see what sort of results I'd get this time. Now I did do some minor tweaking in the ML Drums plugin itself. I tweaked the panning of the toms ever so slightly. I also changed the balance between the top and bottom mics of the snare, also ever so slightly. And I also raised the level of the snare in the room and reverb channels, because I like snares that sound huge with a nice tail, so with nice sustain. But again, the sounds from ML Drums itself are mostly dry. So I used the routing option and sent everything to Cubase so that I could process all the tracks separately. So now I want to show you guys what I did in terms of mixing and processing for the drums. Note that on all the drum tracks I'm using the Slate digital virtual tape machines and the virtual console collection as well. Those add a very subtle analog warmth to the tracks. Let's start with the kick drum and take a listen to the kick with the processing on and the processing off. Check it out. Alright, so that kick drum already sounds quite massive without the processing. I basically used the channel strip EQ to sculpt the tone a little bit, cut a bunch of mids, and also some sub-lows as well. And then I used the Slate Digital Virtual Mix Rack with the FG401 compressor just to add a little bit of punch to the kick drum, with a slow attack and fast release. And that is something that I like to do for shells when I want them to be a bit more punchy and cut through the mix a little bit more. So that's not a lot of processing, because these samples already sound quite good out of the box. Now let's check out the snare. And I like big snares that sound big and fat with a lot of punch and sustain. Let's take a listen. Alright, so again, in the virtual mix rack, I'm using the FGS EQ to sculpt the tone a little bit, cutting some lows, boosting a very tiny bit of low punch, cutting some boxy mids, and also boosting some 8K just for extra clarity and cut, and also using the lift EQ for a bit of clarity. Then again, the FG401 compressor in parallel, just to add a little bit of punch, and my secret weapon for extra sustain and hugeness, the Slate Digital The Monster, which is a free plugin, by the way. I always use it in parallel because it's a very heavy-handed compressor, but it really makes that snare slam. And I'm also adding a little bit of saturation with the Hollywood Tube Saturator model. And that's it. Now the toms. Let's take a quick listen. So not a lot happening there. Again, I'm using the FGS EQ for cutting some mids, boosting some treble with the lift, and again using the FG401 compressor for some extra punch. Now on the hi-hat and ride channels, I'm not doing anything aside from the VTM and VCC stuff. So let's move on to the overheads. Let's take a listen. So these cymbals already sound quite nice, so I didn't have to do a lot. Again, I used the FG SEQ to cut some mids out of the overhead channels and boosting a little bit of top end at 12K or so. And again, adding the monster compressor just to add some life and breath to the overheads. And now the room channel. Let's take a listen. Now for this track, I left the default processing on this channel alone. So there's a little bit of compression happening in the ML Drums plugin and also some filtering. So I'm just using the FG116 compressor just to squash everything a little bit here. And now the reverb channel as well. Let's take a quick listen. Cool. So I'm just adding a little bit of saturation here. Nothing special. Now let's take a quick look at the drum bus. Great, so that's some nice energy and life and oomph that those compressors add to the overall drum tone. Really cool. I'm using the monster compressor once again and some saturation, and then the FG Gray bus compressor for a touch of dynamic control, basically. So as you could see, I'm not doing a whole lot to the drums. It doesn't take a lot of plugins to make them sound great. You just have to kind of know what you want and use as little tools as possible to get those results. My goal was basically to make them sit in the mix and to make them sound huge, fat, and slamming, basically. As I said, these samples by default already sound really balanced, but as you heard, you can go in and add your own plugins to make the sound your own, which is kind of the point of this video. Now, one more thing that I'd like to talk about for a second here is that I did use the human function in ML Drums, which was added in the previous update, and this humanizes the drums a little bit. I'm not sure what it does exactly, but it probably randomizes the velocity and the position a little bit. And I doubled that down a touch by going into the MIDI modifier parameter in Cubase. And that's basically also randomizing the velocity just a little touch and the position as well. So those things really help to make the performance sound real life and human, basically. That's all for this video. Thanks to ML Sound Lab for sponsoring this video. I really appreciate it. Now, these drums are already really affordable, and ML Drums is currently running a discount on their website, but they've asked me to put an additional discount code in the description below. So if you want a ridiculously good deal for these drums, check out the discount code in the description below. You can also start with the free version and then buy one or two of the expansion packs if you so desire, of course. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, as that really helps the channel out. I'd hugely appreciate that. And of course, you can also follow Sonic Drive Studio on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you guys so much, and I hope to see you soon. Cheers.